Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco, Dish Out on the Movies. Today we are doing an older movie, but it's not a really old movie. I don't know what the exact date is, maybe 1970, maybe Marco knows that. It's called Fatal Vision. And it's about the case of Dr. Macdonald from the Green Berets. He was in the Green Berets, and he's still in the military, I guess. And he has to be. And he was accused of murdering his wife and two young daughters, and she was also pregnant. I don't know, 4 or 5 months pregnant, and this tells the whole story. He insisted that they lived at Fort Bragg, and it was back then before 9/11. I guess all the military bases were kind of open, so anybody could go on them and leave, and now it's a lot more regulated and strict. But so there were, quote, hippies who lived within the base, I guess. And he blamed it on hippies. It was kind of like this happened after the Manson murders. So he said it was them, but mostly people suspected him. And you could tell, that was one thing was interesting, the acting. Without saying anything, you could tell by the faces of like the detectives. Because they always look at the spouse. If there's a murder, no matter what, they always look at the spouse, the very first thing. I mean, that's kind of like a given. And but you could tell like throughout, if something he said or the way that he acted about what was said to him, that you could tell that people doubted him and thought that's kind of strange behavior. You could just tell by their faces without them saying anything. But go ahead, Marco. What do you have to say about the movie? Because it might have been a mini-series, and I think I did see it. I mean, this was a million years ago, and
Well,
the guy, you could tell about the actor who played the guy. But you had more information about that.
well, guess I'm allowed to talk now. Well, I thought that this movie would be good to review. I thought that, every once in a while we watch a really good TV movie, because there's all these good TV movies out there.
Yeah.
And this one just proves it, For so many years, you heard people say as like an insult, they would say, "This movie's bad, it's like a TV movie." But you look at all the TV movies and it's like, wow, these are all really, really good. Like, honestly, Fatal Vision is better than any of the movies that I saw last year. So any of the 2023 movies like Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, like, this movie's way better than all those. And so it just goes to show that, like, TV movies are not really as bad as people say. And
you could think of the Stephen King movies that have been on TV.
Those are pretty bad.
There's a lot of them, and some of them have been pretty good. So, and they always lasted more than one night. You could count on maybe 2 or 3. They had a series called Centennial, and that was about Colorado and prehistoric all the way to historic and all the way to today. And I mean, just all these really good TV miniseries and TV movies. There were some really good ones years ago.
And this one, it really is mostly like 2 or 3 people that star in the movie. You have Jeffrey himself, and this is Gary Cole's first movie. He's a really good actor.
Yeah.
And for this to be his first movie, too, like, he did a really good job for this being his first movie. Like, if you look at video footage of the real guy back in the 80s or whatever.
70s. Early 70s.
70s and 80s. But if you look at footage of him, he did a perfect job at playing him, even though the guy in real life, he looks a lot creepier, he sounds a lot creepier, and when you hear him talk, you don't believe anything he says at all. But when you hear that Gary Cole, you can kind of believe him a little bit because, you know, he's a lot more likable, and he just does such a great job. And that's another great thing about these TV movies is that, you know, you have these movies like, I don't know, like these crappy serial killer movies, and you only get to spend like a little bit of time with them. But in these TV movies, you spend like a couple of hours with these actors playing these bad guys. And it's really cool to just get to spend all that time with this character. You know, like you get to really get to know them, and you get to see like all these little things that you wouldn't have seen in like a 2-hour movie of this movie. You know? Right, Safi?
Well, yeah, and I guess I have a couple of complaints about it, and
the movie?
Well, no, just about
because this is a review. I mean, it's not
Okay.
like we're not like, you know, this is a review.
Well, it was a little dark sometimes, like when they did the murder, but then that was brought out as a piece of evidence. In other words, he said he was in the living room and he could see there were 3 or 4 people. He was trying to liken it to the Manson, Charles Manson murders, where there were hippies and there was a girl with a floppy hat and boots and long hair. But then when the guy laid out, like I think it was his father-in-law, laid out on the couch, and where he supposedly said he was asleep on the couch because his daughter wet his side of the bed. She had come to bed with he and his wife, and so he was out on the couch. That's what he said anyway, because of that. And so he said they were standing over me, and I could see them, their faces. And then they described these hippie type descriptions. But then he shut the lamp out. And with the lamp, you couldn't see their faces or anything about them, or if they had long hair or boots or anything. And so, of course, that the lighting did play a part in the evidence of the murders. I think my favorite part about the movie, and I know it sounds it's odd, but they had a forensic examiner, and
well, what was unique about this case, which usually it's very hard to go through these scenes, is that what was unique about this one, though, is that everyone in the family had a different blood type. So they were able to basically pinpoint exactly how everything happened in the exact order that it happened because they all had the different blood types. And I just thought that was hilarious because, like, I think that it's kind of embarrassing, the fact that, like, this guy, this Jeffrey Macdonald, he had, like, all the advantages. He was, like, a successful doctor, military person. He was sleeping around with, like, a million different women at the same time.
61 women or something like that.
And
they only said that once. And I was thinking, like, that was my problem with it, was the motive.
And everyone would believe him automatically because he's like a good old boy. But, like...
And he was good looking, at least in the movie.
when it came to like, fixing up the crime scene and coming up with the story, he, like, put, like, hardly any effort into it at all. And so it was, like, horribly obvious that, like, he did not, that, like, all the stuff, it was all made up because, like, they were able to, like, determine, like, how everything was just completely bullshit. Like, every single little thing that he said was just completely like, I mean, it's bizarre. It's like he had all that expertise and he had all that time. Like he could have done anything more, but he didn't. He just stuck with the stupid little story. And he says, like, I saw the movie Easy Rider, and, it really reminded me of that. It reminded me of those types of people. And I was like, it's really, really embarrassing. So it just shows that, like, he probably he has a mental illness.
Yeah, well, it was also, too, but I don't think they ever said it. If they did, I missed it. But I think he just didn't want to be tied down to one person and have a family. He didn't want the responsibility.
But, with, like, you think about, like, with OJ, you think about, like, he really, at least he put the effort in, like...
To hide his crime.
Yeah, like, he gave that guy the bag with all the evidence in it and said, go get rid of it, and nobody ever knows what was in that bag.
No.
Remember that?
Yeah, it was at the airport or something.
Yeah, and like he did all that stuff to cover it up. At least he actually put effort into it. This guy, he's just like, oh yeah, I read in this magazine. I read this little article about
His Esquire.
About the murders and last year, and that'll be really easy to do. Hippies, those dirty little hippies. They just suck. I'm just gonna blame it on the hippies, man.
And they saw, and you could tell by the way the detectives looked, even though they were I think they were associated with the military, you could tell they were doubting what he said.
And he had all the creative freedom, too. Like, he had the ability, he could have made them say anything, but he said that one of them just kept on chanting, acid is groovy, kill the pigs. Like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
And he didn't sustain any life-threatening wound.
Yeah.
And he
pretended like he did, though, which was hilarious. He was like, I was in the ICU for 4 days. I had all this surgery and stuff. And he was lying.
Yeah, well, that was for... what was that, like a TV show interview? Like a talk show?
Going on talk shows after that event happening.
Well, he started using what had happened to get money. Like somebody was writing a book and when he finally, at first they had to bring him on trial at a military tribunal, but they cleared him because they said they didn't have enough evidence. And then the father-in-law, the dead woman's father, finally got a court transcript of the tribunal, I guess.
And that was another thing, was Jeffrey was, like, avoiding giving him the transcript. He was, like, basically dodging him. Whenever the father-in-law asked, he'd just be like, so, because he didn't want him, because he knew probably that the father-in-law was so smart that he'd figure it out.
And he did. They showed him going through it. And that was another interesting thing, too. He hadn't even gone through, like, half of it. And he had found over 100 things that could never have happened.
It's pretty bad.
He even traced, like, the story that he made up about the killing was that, like, what he did that night. He heard them crying out, and he went to this bedroom and that bedroom and the other bedroom, and he went to the kitchen, he went to the bathroom in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the father-in-law, he actually traced all the steps of everything he said in the transcript. And he said there's no way this could ever all be done in 2 minutes. I thought that's just one thing.
There were two really embarrassing things. I thought, number one, in the living room, he was supposed to have struggled with these hippies. And there were these cards that were sitting on top of a shelf or something.
Like,
and
greeting cards.
Those cards would have knocked over. They preserved the scene, though. So the fact that, like, those cards were standing up straight is pretty hilarious.
Years later.
Yeah.
They went back to the scene. They had not... The person, I guess it would have been the government. This was a military housing. and they didn't let anybody take the apartment or whatever you want to call it, and they they just left the scene as it was. All the blood stains where they were, the toys were still in their places. The little girls had toys. Everything was as it was that night, pretty much. And
I thought
they could go. They went back years later, and that's where it said the father-in-law traced this scene that was on the transcript, and he said he never could have done all that in 2 minutes.
I thought the most embarrassing thing, though, out of everything, was the fact that fucking Dr. Jeffrey, he's so stupid. He took his murder weapons that he used, and he just threw them out the back door.
It's really weird. And see, he wanted to make it look like, because this story was, there was 3 or 4 hippies, and they had done all this, and he wanted to make it look like they all had weapons. So he ended up, he had a big club, and I guess, and the ice pick.
And a knife and the ice pick.
Knives.
2 knives, yeah. Well, no, one of them wasn't used. The curved knife wasn't used in the crimes.
But he put all of them out there on the back.
Yeah, and that's something where that was just so obvious, because in a lot of these murders, like the O.J. Simpson case, the murder weapon is never found. Because you know what the bad guy does? He gets rid of it. He disposes of it so that it can't be found. And this guy is just so stupid that he just tosses it out the back door. And it's like, yeah, nobody else will ever think about that. Because, like, you think about, if I was a dirty hippie, not just a hippie, but a dirty hippie, and I smelled, and I was really into acid and killing pigs, which, you know, they were never into that to begin with.
Yeah, supposedly they kill the wife and 2 little girls.
Yeah.
But they talk about pigs. He's the pig. He's
The
pig. And they didn't,
well,
and nothing happened to him, basically.
The hippie movement was infiltrated by the CIA. So, really, I mean...
Well, the FBI.
The hippies were the pigs at the same time. And that's something that people don't talk about. But if I was a dirty hippie, and I went to a house to kill a family for no reason, and because, I don't know, I wanted to, I don't even know. There's no
base with other military people. Yeah. Why that family?
I don't know.
That was never established. And I thought, well, maybe he had purposely found them somewhere, because they were on the base. Like I said, this is an open base, and they said that in the movie. And I thought, well, maybe he saw them when he was driving around, and so he decided to pick them. But it's just because it was just convenient, a convenient sighting.
If I was a dirty hippie and I went to a house to kill a family, and I wanted to, because if I use the weapons that are there at their house, which I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to bring my own weapon, because, you know, why would I want to risk going there and then they already
look through all their drawers for some kind of weapon?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, why would I throw it in the backyard? If I would just leave it at the scene. Just wipe it off and leave it at the scene.
They were right by the house, like a window well.
Or take it with me. Why would I throw it out in the backyard?
Well, actually, they showed the knives, and I guess the ice pick, maybe, all together right by the window well, they were laid out there. And that's just asinine. And another thing, too...
He must have been really, really, just messed up. Well, he must have been I don't know, I just committed this murder, and I'm really tired, and I just want to get this done. I'm just going to put the knives outside. I've got this huge club that I just beat people's brains in with. I'm just going to throw it out in the backyard and be done with it. I need some help.
Yeah, I don't think anybody fell for the pretend crying.
I need some help.
Well, another thing, too, that another investigator pointed
The
out.
hippies got to me.
He tried to intimate that they were all high on LSD.
Yeah.
And if you have 3 or 4 people, they wouldn't all be high.
No.
In other words, they wouldn't be able to function. They wouldn't have been able to leave the house, wherever they were. And so that was another thing that was just... But just the thing that impressed me most was that the fact that they all had different blood types, and the medical examiner had it all. It was like all mapped out. They had a big map of the trail of the blood and where the blood types were. And another thing too, he had a pajama top. He had pajamas on.
And he really, if you thought he fucked up with the murder weapons, he really fucked up with his pajamas.
Yeah, she got the ice pick or something, or knife, and she tried to defend herself. And of course, she was defending her daughters. And it was, pajamas aren't. I don't think they'd be too heavy because you can't sleep; they get too hot. And this wasn't the winter. I don't believe.
No, Safi. What they said, what happened was that he put all those ice pick holes in the pajama tops to make it look like he was using it to defend himself against the bad guys.
Yeah, but I thought she was defending herself and ripped the fabric.
She did rip open his pajamas and everything, like she was doing that, but she wasn't, because then she would have stabbed him.
Yeah.
If she had stabbed through the... No, what he
was
did...
using it to ward her off, I thought.
No, he put all these stabs in there to pretend like he did. And what they said was that if the pajamas were in motion, then they would have been tears and not just holes.
Yeah.
And they did this demonstration in the courtroom where they actually tested it out, where he was just standing in place to see if they would be tears or holes. And it was funny because, Jeffrey didn't have any defensive wounds on his hands or his arms. And they did this for like 2 seconds, and the other guy actually accidentally got cut with the ice pick.
Yeah.
So, like, just with doing that for 2 seconds, even though he wasn't even trying to hurt him, he got a defensive wound on his hand. So, like, the fact that Jeffrey didn't have any, it's just, like, it's really, really embarrassing. Like, because they tried to spin that as though it was, like, embarrassing, but that made the point even more.
Yeah.
That
did.
He should have had wounds on his hands. And again, why didn't he just stab himself on his hands?
I think he was too much of a chicken, what.
I don't... He stabbed his own lung. I mean, he
did that.
He stabbed himself. I mean, that's pretty... ew.
But he did it in such a way that it was easily recoverable.
Yeah.
Because he's a doctor. He would know what would be the better way. He just didn't think about anything else. I don't know if he just thought he was just so invincible being in the military. But because it did take... After the military... who messed up the crime scene, and because I just think that they were so unfamiliar and inexperienced handling evidence to a murder. It wasn't a place where they had constant murders on the military.
Which I think the one thing I was disappointed by was I was kind of interested in that aspect. I thought it would have been interesting to see more of like the military investigation and how they were trying to handle this murder investigation that like they didn't really do that a lot before. I thought that would have been a lot more interesting.
I think over the years there's always been this conflict. Now I don't know about now, but where the military is so interested in protecting either they're too protective of their own, or they get really pissed off and they put them in the what do they call it? It's not the slammer, but it's their word for putting them in prison, military prison, but they have a word, I can't think of it. But anyway, so there's always been this conflict. I mean, it's been around forever. But in this case, they weren't very diligent, and I just think it's because of their inexperience. And it took the work of the father-in-law, and they even say this when you look it up for real, his work to get the case, to look at the transcript, do all that reenactment, to go visit the crime scene, and then, of course, they had to exhume the bodies because they had to find out about the blood types and all that stuff and confirm, like, she had hair in her hands. What was the hair from? What was it? And so they had to find that out. And so it took him, God, how many years did it take? 5, 6, to get it investigated, like the FBI, and they did, and have them, they had that forensic examiner, and he had Andy Griffith was in it, and he played this prosecuting attorney, and for the government.
He did a good job.
Yeah, he did a great job, and I think it must have been his audition for Matlock later on in life.
I'll look it up.
Because Matlock was, a lawyer who went, it was like a detective show. It's on nowadays, too.
Well, I would also say we should mention that he was an abuser, Dr. Jeffrey. And I thought...
But they don't really bring that up, I don't think.
No. And
That's the thing.
I thought it's something interesting and kind of scary to think about is the fact that if he hadn't killed his family, he would have been abusing them for years to come, to no one's knowledge.
Yeah, because they kept very quiet about it. Nobody knew.
So
Nobody.
that's also so that so he killed them, but if he hadn't killed them, he would have been beating them with that club for years and years.
But I think he just wanted to be a playboy.
Yeah, he did do that before Matlock.
Yeah.
2 years before.
2 years. Yeah, but he was really... I actually liked him better in this movie than I do in Matlock.
Why?
I don't know. I don't care for the show. I used to watch it.
Oh.
I don't care for it that much.
Damn you, Safi.
I like Perry Mason better. I think it's funny.
Oh.
Even though they make we've heard otherwise, but they make criminal trials where people get indicted. Ever hear about that? And they make it go up faster. And
so he wanted to be
not reality.
So well, I just think that it's kind of stupid because if Jeffrey wanted to be a playboy, he was already a playboy.
Well, I know,
he was having all sorts of affairs.
His wife and daughters were still there, and another one was coming on the way. And he just didn't want that responsibility anymore. I mean, they never really talked about the motive, I don't believe. That was the only thing, I'd say, the weakness in the movie. Because you have to have opportunity, motive, and what's the other thing? There's 3 things that you have to have. There's no such thing as a coincidence. You have to have opportunity, motive, and the means, I guess, to do it. I think it's the 3 basic things. And it took a long time. It took years before they even would try this case for real or investigate it first.
Look, the guy from Ghost was in Matlock. The bad guy.
Oh, really?
Beat that. Yeah, it took them 10 years to get Jeffrey put in prison.
Yeah, and it said he was up for parole in 1991, but then in the movie, like at the end when they had these little running messages.
He has gotten denied parole every single time.
Yeah, and he's in Texas too.
He has no more. He literally ran out of appeals, so he's stuck now, which is good because because he
did get married again, though. It showed. I don't know what happened. He had been going out with somebody after it happened, and they showed him with her. And they were in California, and they had a yacht and all this BS. and she, wore her little bikini, and she was young and cute, and I don't know if that's real or not, but it did say on the informational site that he had got married again while in prison, which always, I don't know. It's a mystery to me why these people want to marry somebody who's in prison and they're never going to get out. So it's bizarre.
Well, why wouldn't you want to be with Jeffrey?
Well,
Who
bludgeoned and stabbed his two young, pretty little darling daughters.
If you do something wrong, he'll tell you how to fix it and beat you with a club, and everything will be okay.
And
right?
They didn't back then too. They didn't talk. Now they would do it today for sure, but she was pregnant, and she was like 4 or 5 months pregnant, and that would have been murder of a being too, because by killing her, he killed the baby. So that would have been another murder too.
Well, I thought personally, I was kind of disappointed that most of the movie was spent with the father-in-law, because
he's a famous actor, been around for a long time.
Well, he was good, and he was a great character. He's the reason why Jeffrey got put into prison, actually.
And that is for real thing.
Is because it's all because of him. And so that's pretty cool. But I was disappointed we didn't get to see more of Jeffrey's family.
No.
And that, like, when he went through the murders, instead of getting to hear anything or anything like that, we just hear the narration with a silent video. And I thought, like, are they just doing this because they're not allowed to show this on TV, or they're not allowed to, like, even, like, hear them screaming or anything? Or, like, I didn't understand that. I thought that was kind of weird.
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know. But I still thought it was a pretty good movie.
Well, because it was very dark.
Yeah, it was
that whole
dark.
sequence. There's no audio except for the narration, and I just thought that whole sequence could have been done better.
Yeah, it was hard to see anything, and not like you want to see, but I mean, you just could not see at all.
Well, you can look up the crime scene pictures on Google. So, I mean, that's what's funny too, is that, like, oh, we can't show this on television, but then
God.
We can look it all up on Google Images, and we can see exactly what it looked like.
Why would they do that?
What do you mean?
They have posted photographs of the murder scene. With the bodies.
Yeah.
The children and the wife.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's so that you can see for yourself, and you can make sure.
Why would they do that?
Because the people need to be allowed to see them. They should not be censored, and then, yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it is.
I'd like to see more though, because I mean,
and they talked about that pajama top he was wearing. He took it off, and the fibers from it. And that's another thing. They were everywhere.
Yeah, I'd like to see the pajama top though.
They were all over the bodies, different bodies, and why would that be the case? I mean,
I don't know.
It's just like.
Well, because he said he was. He tried to go to all of them and give them mouth to mouth and stuff like that.
Right.
Look at that.
God.
You like that, Safi?
No.
Why? You get to see it for yourself.
I don't want to see it.
Oh, wait, is that the pajama top right there?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. What an idiot. I mean, that's just... I don't know. I mean, this guy's either mentally retarded or he's mentally ill. Either way, he needs to. He needs a doctor himself.
They never show. That was the thing. The motive were just. It's kind of implied what it is, the philandering. But the other thing is, how did he get so violent? I mean, was he really an abuser? That much of an abuser? He was philandering, but that's not hitting. or anything like that. So you never. That's well, like, where did that come from? I mean, it's just that part was strange, and never really, to my satisfaction, never really explained, or maybe they just couldn't explain it.
I don't know. I mean, you couldn't believe anything that he said about it, so. Oh, what do you think of that, Safi?
That's horrible.
Why, yes.
I guess it happened so long ago, I didn't realize they did that kind of thing.
What? Did what?
Show evidence like that.
Obviously.
I'm really shocked. I don't know what to say.
You saw the JFK video. You saw the
yeah, I know.
1969 staged photographs. You've seen it all.
Because there's this conspiracy that everybody suspects, and with 1, 2, 3 gunmen, whatever gunmen. I mean, it's not just one.
Yeah, but you've seen a lot of this type of stuff.
People have had tried it, and because so many people have died, and so many people during the investigation died, that they've had a hard time trying to prove.
Yeah, that's because they all get killed by the CIA.
Maybe.
And so
but anyway, that the thing is that this thing, the guy was so dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, he might have been a good doctor, but he sure was dumb about all this other stuff. I mean, really stupid.
Well, because you think about it, he had time. He could have easily said that, like, I woke up and then I fell asleep, because if you don't know, when he got home, he had just got back from working a 24-hour shift at the hospital. So after 24 hours not sleeping, basically, they would have understood if he had woken back up and then he just fell asleep or something. Like, so he had the time, he had all the advantages, and still he just completely screwed it up. And so that just really goes to show his character is really not impressive compared to the guy in Echoes in the Darkness, who was like planning it out for like 1,000,000 years.
He had every little thing planned out.
Telling everyone about Dr. Smith and how he was gonna get that girl, and it was really him that was gonna kill her and everything. Like, you know, he really, like, this guy pales in comparison to that pretentious English professor. Right, Safi?
Yeah.
You miss Dr. Smith?
Every time Marco says that, I think of Lost in Space. Every single time, because you remember in Lost in Space, Dr. Smith is like a huge character, and he was always trying to sabotage the family.
And I would say Echoes in the Darkness was better than this, just because I felt like that movie did a better job of, like, showing all the events. Whereas this movie was heavily focused on the father-in-law.
Yeah, because he's a star, Carl Malden.
Yeah.
And, of course, his wife, Eva, what is it?
Eva Marie Saint. From Hitchcock movies.
Yeah, she'd been around for a while. Both of them are big stars. And, of course, the guy who played Macdonald, like we said, this is his first role.
Yeah, and the fact that it was his first role is very, very impressive. I would say that he's an underrated actor.
Yeah, and that was big responsibility.
Yeah, he had, like, one of the main roles.
Yeah.
Well, what would you give this movie, or do you have anything else to say?
No.
Really?
I was just really impressed with the forensic examiner's map, but he even said that the victims helped the story because of all the different blood types. Everybody in the house had a different blood type, and I guess that's just a very unusual thing.
Yeah, it is.
And since Macdonald was never going to tell the truth about anything, it was their own. By their own blood, and told the story.
I would just say too.
That was interesting.
I would just say too. I think maybe the last thing that I'd like to say before we do the reviews is that I really wish that for one of these cases, like when the killer becomes like 90 or something, that they just finally give it up because
Yeah.
they're gonna die in prison anyway, or maybe they're on their deathbed or something. Like, I wish that would happen once in a
And
while,
it doesn't.
and it doesn't because
Look at OJ, for example.
yeah, OJ.
Yeah, we're going to hear the truth.
And I did think it was funny with this case though, because with the OJ case, they went into OJ's house and they put all this black people stuff all over the walls to make it look like he was down with the black people.
And he had pictures of famous white celebrities.
Yeah, it
everywhere.
was just all fake and phony and completely. They basically decorated his house to appease the jury and make them think that he was like a black community figure or something. But whereas with this case, they didn't decorate his apartment at all, or his house, whatever. The jury just saw what it was like on the night of the murder. So, there wasn't any like stuff that they could do to manipulate the jury like they did with OJ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just very interesting,
Yeah.
to compare and to hear all these different little tactics.
Tactics?
Tactics by the defense attorneys or by the prosecution, it just depends. And what was another thing too is just the preservation of the crime scene. That they had not done anything with it for years, and that the father-in-law could go back and he could take, the FBI could go back there.
And I thought, how does that place smell?
I know.
It probably...
It hadn't been, whenever they have a crime scene nowadays, they have these professional cleaners, and they go in there and clean it up. I read a book about it.
But now I think I think back then though it would just smell like blood.
Oh, I don't know. Oh God, terrible, terrible. So I guess my food review would be like a fast food burger, like Macdonald's or maybe a Wendy's single, and while they're okay, and you can kind of control what's on them by whatever you want, ketchup, mustard, pickles, onions, cheese, some or all of those, lettuce, tomato. It doesn't compare to like a homemade hamburger that's cooked at home, and you have those same, it's a TV movie, and it was pretty good, and that's what I'm saying, that it's like a hamburger you get at a fast food place. Of course, you have control over how good it is, and I think it's kind of like that, I don't really care for hamburgers that much, but I mean, if you just are in the mood to have one, it's not the same as the one at home, but it's good. It can be good depending on how you get it dressed up. So what about you, Marco?
Well, just got done with Buffalo Wild Wings, and I decided to get onion rings as a side. They have fries, they have tater tots, they have potato wedges, they have mac and cheese, I think. So they have multiple sides you can choose from, and I chose to get onion rings. And, I don't usually eat onion rings at all, like hardly at all. But I got them, and they were pretty good. And I would just say that this movie's kind of like onion rings. It's like, I don't like to get them all the time, but when I do, they're pretty good as a side, and they do the job just fine. And, I don't know, where did onion rings come from? Because, they're, I know that, onion is healthier than, a French fry, but,
It's still fried.
onion rings are not healthier than French fries just because there's onions. But where did onion rings come from?
I think you have to look at something like that in the dictionary.
Where did they come from? They appeared in a British cookbook written by a guy named John Maillard from 1802.
Wow.
Oh, who's John Maillard?
I have no idea.
John Maillard, chef. I don't know, but he wrote a book called The Art of Cookery. It's pretty weird, like, this guy invented onion rings, and they don't even have a picture of his fat face.
They couldn't.
You know?
Not of that year.
But they didn't even have, like, a description of him, and
Would have been a painting.
Well, they don't have anything. Like, what the fuck is up with that?
He was just cook.
He wrote The Art of Cookery.
I don't know.
They need to make, like, a movie about John Maillard called The Art of Cookery, and it'll just be 2 hours of making onion rings and being like, yeah, I invented onion rings, and I'm better than anyone.
That's interesting.
Right?
Yep. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and become one of our subscribers. And have a lovely evening. Goodbye.
Bye!